First contact. The quantum anomaly detector wasn't supposed to be running that night. The facility's main systems were powered down for routine maintenance, and only the emergency backup generators hummed quietly in the basement of the Quantum Research Institute. Dr. Sarah Chen had stayed late, running one last diagnostic on her modified detection array, an unauthorized modification that could have cost her the position she'd spent 15 years working toward. But at 2:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, that unauthorized modification changed humanity's destiny forever. The alert started as a subtle oscillation, barely distinguishable from background noise. Sarah almost dismissed it, her tired eyes struggling to focus on the holographic display. But something about the pattern caught her attention. It wasn't random. It wasn't natural. It was structured, complex, and impossibly precise. "Computer, analyze signal pattern and compare to known quantum signatures," she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. The response came almost immediately. "No match found in database. Signal demonstrates characteristics inconsistent with all known natural phenomena." Sarah's hands trembled as she initiated a full-spectrum analysis. The quantum signature was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, a perfect lattice of interwoven probability states, each carrying what appeared to be encoded information. It wasn't just a signal, it was a message. Within hours, the facility transformed from its quiet night state into a hub of frenetic activity. Government officials arrived in unmarked vehicles, and Sarah found herself in a secured conference room, explaining her discovery to a panel of stern-faced individuals who seemed to alternate between skepticism and barely contained excitement. Dr. Chen, the man who had introduced himself only as Director Matthews, began, "You're telling us this signal contains what appears to be DNA-like coding sequences?" Sarah nodded, pulling up a holographic representation. "Yes, but it's more than that. The quantum structure itself mimics organic patterns we see in neural networks. It's as if someone found a way to encode consciousness itself into quantum states." A murmur ran through the room. An older woman with silver hair leaned forward. "And you're certain this isn't terrestrial in origin?" "The signal is coming from approximately 47,000 light-years away, near the edge of the Sagittarius arm," Sarah explained. "And it's being transmitted through quantum entanglement channels we didn't even know existed. This isn't just non-terrestrial technology, it's beyond anything humanity has even theorized." As the implications sank in, the room grew quiet. Humanity had long wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, but it came with a puzzle that challenged their understanding of physics itself. Over the next few weeks, Sarah led a team of quantum physicists, cryptographers, and xenobiologists in attempting to decode the message. The work was exhausting, but she couldn't help feeling energized by each new discovery. The signal wasn't just carrying information, it was teaching them how to understand it, like a cosmic Rosetta Stone. "It's elegant," she explained during one late-night session with her closest colleague, Dr. James Harrison. "Each layer we decode teaches us how to understand the next. Whoever sent this wanted to make absolutely certain that any species capable of detecting the signal would eventually be able to understand it." James nodded, his dark eyes reflecting the glow of the quantum displays. "But why? Why go to such lengths to ensure the message could be decoded?" The answer came 3 months into their research, when they finally decoded the first complete sequence. Sarah stood before the assembled team, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. "The message is from a species that calls themselves the Arxians," she began. "They were among the first sentient races to evolve in our galaxy, achieving technological advancement we can barely comprehend. But they're dying." She paused, allowing the information to sink in. "The Arxians evolved beyond physical form millennia ago, existing as patterns of pure energy in consciousness. But they've discovered their energy patterns are degrading. They've reached out to every advanced civilization they could find, seeking help in preserving their consciousness before it's lost forever." "And the other civilizations?" someone asked. "What did they do?" Sarah's expression hardened. Nothing. The message contains records of their attempts to contact over 30 different spacefaring civilizations. Each one concluded that preserving consciousness patterns of pure energy beings was impossible. They all refused to help. As she explained the Arxians' theories about human consciousness and its unique quantum properties, Sarah could see the excitement building in her colleagues' eyes. They were being offered a chance not just to save an ancient species, but to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its machines or weapons, but in its mind and spirit. The first transmission to the Arxians was sent exactly 1 month later. It was simple, encoded in the same quantum language they had used, carrying humanity's response to their plea for help. "We hear you. We will try. You are not alone." The response came almost instantly, carrying with it the coordinates to a hidden quantum archive and the beginning of humanity's greatest challenge. As Sarah decoded the new message, she couldn't help but smile. The other species had called it impossible because they had approached it as a purely technical problem. But humanity had always excelled at achieving the impossible, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they were willing to try when others had given up. The real work was just beginning, and Sarah knew the road ahead would be difficult. But as she looked at the quantum patterns swimming before her eyes, she felt a surge of pride in her species. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy had placed their final hope in humanity not despite their limitations, but because of them. The signal that had changed everything continued to pull steadily, carrying with it the weight of an ancient species' trust in humanity's unique ability to see hope where others saw only impossibility. The archive. The quantum archive materialized like a ghostly cathedral in the void of space, its structure visible only through the specialized sensors of humanity's hastily assembled research vessel, the Curiosity. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her reflection pale against the transparent aluminum as she watched the ethereal structure shimmer in and out of normal spacetime. "It's beautiful," she whispered, more to herself than to Dr. Harrison, who stood beside her. The archive was a masterpiece of engineering that existed simultaneously in multiple quantum states, a physical impossibility made real by a civilization that had transcended physical form itself. "The Arxians didn't just build this," James said, his voice filled with wonder. "They grew it, shaped it from the quantum foam of space itself. We're looking at technology so advanced it might as well be magic." The ship's quantum sensors began downloading the archive's contents, a process that would have taken centuries with conventional technology. But the Arxians had designed their repository specifically for humanity's level of development, creating interfaces that worked with rather than against the limitations of human technology. As the data streamed in, Sarah and her team began to understand the true nature of their task. The Arxians weren't simply energy beings. They were a vast collective consciousness, billions of individual minds linked together in a cosmic dance of thought and memory. Their degradation wasn't just a physical process, it was the unraveling of an entire civilization's collective soul. "Look at this," Sarah called out, projecting a holographic representation of an Arxian consciousness pattern. "Their thought processes exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously. No wonder the other species thought preserving them was impossible. There's no known technology that could contain such complex patterns." But as she studied the data, something caught her attention. "James, come look at this," she said, zooming in on a particular section of the pattern. "Does this remind you of anything?" James leaned in, his eyes widening as he recognized the similarity. "It's like human neural patterns during deep meditation. The same kind of quantum coherence we've observed in human consciousness studies." Sarah nodded excitedly. "Exactly. The other species tried to solve this with technology alone. They looked for ways to build quantum computers complex enough to store Arxian consciousness. But what if that's not the answer? What if the solution isn't about storage at all?" The implications of her discovery spread through the research team like wildfire. The human brain, through mechanisms science still didn't fully understand, naturally generated quantum fields similar to those used by Arxian consciousness. Not as complex, not as vast, but fundamentally compatible. The ship's communication officer interrupted their discussion. "Dr. Chen, we're receiving a transmission. Well, you should see this." The main screen flickered to life, showing a being that seemed to be made of pure light and geometry. An Archean, choosing to communicate directly for the first time. "Greetings, children of Earth," the being's thoughts translated directly into words in their minds. "We have watched your initial analysis of our archive with great interest. You have already begun to see what others could not." Sarah stepped forward. "You knew, didn't you? You knew that human consciousness had this potential." The being's form shifted, creating patterns that somehow conveyed both agreement and sadness. "We have studied your species since you first began to dream. Your minds are unique among all the races we have encountered. Where others see absolute barriers between matter and energy, between consciousness and reality, your species dreams of possibilities." "But the other advanced species," James interjected, "surely they must have." "They tried to solve the problem with pure logic," the Archean interrupted. "They sought to build machines to contain us, to reduce us to data that could be stored and processed. But consciousness is not data. It is a dance of quantum possibilities, a symphony of entangled states. Your species understands this instinctively, even if you cannot yet explain it scientifically." The implications were staggering. The Archeans weren't looking for a technological solution, they were looking for a species capable of becoming living bridges between physical and quantum reality. But as the team processed this revelation, another transmission cut through their communications. This one came from the Galactic Council, the coalition of advanced species that had previously refused to help the Archeans. "Attention human vessel," a harsh, mechanical voice declared. "You are hereby ordered to cease all interaction with the Archean archive. The preservation of quantum beings in biological substrates is forbidden under Galactic Law Section 47 Beta. This experiment poses an unacceptable risk to the established order." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. "Under whose authority? What gives you the right to condemn an entire civilization to death?" "We have studied this problem for millennia," the council representative responded. "The integration of quantum consciousness into biological systems could create hybrid beings of unprecedented power. The risk of destabilizing the galaxy's balance of power is too great." The Archean's light form pulsed with what seemed like amusement. "And yet, it is precisely this defiance, this unwillingness to accept arbitrary limitations, that makes humanity uniquely suited to our needs." Sarah looked around at her team, seeing determination in their eyes. The Council's warning had only strengthened their resolve. Humanity had never been good at accepting limitations imposed by others, especially when those limitations stood between them and saving lives. "We're continuing with the research," Sarah declared, both to her team and to the Council. "If you want to stop us, you'll have to do more than quote regulations." As the Council's transmission cut off abruptly, Sarah turned back to the Archean. "Show us everything. If we're going to do this, we need to understand exactly what we're attempting." The archive's data flow increased, pouring forth secrets that would revolutionize humanity's understanding of consciousness, quantum physics, and the very nature of reality itself. The other species had seen this knowledge as dangerous. Humanity saw it as an opportunity not just to save the Archeans, but to evolve beyond their current limitations. The real question wasn't whether they could succeed, but what humanity would become in the process of trying. As Sarah began organizing the teams that would attempt the first consciousness integration experiments, she couldn't help but wonder if the Archeans had chosen humanity not just for their unique mental capabilities, but for their fundamental willingness to leap into the unknown in service of a greater cause. The quantum archive continued its ethereal dance around the ship, its secrets waiting to be unlocked by the one species willing to risk everything to save a civilization they had only just met. The human factor. The meditation chamber aboard the Curiosity hummed with quantum field generators, their subtle vibrations matching the natural frequency of human consciousness. Dr. Sarah Chen sat cross-legged in the center, surrounded by monitoring equipment and worried faces. She had insisted on being the first test subject, despite the protests of her colleagues. "Neural patterns are stable," Dr. Harrison reported, his voice tight with concern. "Quantum field coherence at 87% and rising." "Sarah, are you sure about this?" Sarah opened her eyes briefly, offering a calm smile. "Someone has to be first, James. We've run all the simulations. We know it's possible. Now it's time to prove it." The Arxian representative, whom they had come to call Aurora, hovered nearby, its light form shifting in patterns that seemed to express both excitement and concern. "Your courage honors us, Dr. Chen. But you must understand, this has never been attempted. The merging of quantum and biological consciousness could have unexpected results. That's what makes us human," Sarah replied, closing her eyes again. "We don't let the unknown stop us from trying." The chamber fell silent as Sarah's meditation deepened. The quantum field generators adjusted automatically, creating a space where the barriers between physical and quantum reality began to blur. On the monitors, Sarah's neural patterns began to shift, taking on characteristics that shouldn't have been possible in a biological brain. Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared. "Multiple vessels dropping out of FTL," the tactical officer announced. "Galactic Council signatures confirmed. They're charging weapons." James moved to abort the experiment, but Sarah's voice stopped him. "No. We're too close. Let them come. The Arxians chose us for a reason, let's prove they chose right." The Council ships surrounded the Curiosity, their weapons trained on the human vessel. A transmission cut through their communications. "This is your final warning. Cease this forbidden experiment immediately, or we will be forced to take action." But something was already happening in the meditation chamber. Sarah's consciousness, guided by structures encoded in the Arxian archive, began to expand beyond normal human limitations. She could feel the quantum field around her, could sense the vast network of possibilities that the Arxians called home. And then she wasn't alone. An Arxian consciousness, one of their younger members, merged with her quantum field. The experience was beyond anything human language could describe, like having access to an infinite library while simultaneously being every book within it. Colors that had no names, thoughts that existed in dimensions beyond space and time, memories that spanned millennia, all filtered through her human consciousness in a way that somehow made sense. On the monitors, James watched in amazement as Sarah's neural pattern stabilized at a level of complexity that should have been impossible. She wasn't just containing the Arxian consciousness, she was engaging with it, her human mind adapting and expanding to accommodate patterns of thought that no other species had been able to comprehend. "Impossible," the Council representative transmitted. "No biological system should be capable of sustaining quantum coherence at that level." Aurora's light form pulsed with what could only be described as joy. "You continue to think in terms of limitations. Humans think in terms of possibilities. That is why they succeed where you failed." Sarah opened her eyes, which now seemed to contain galaxies. When she spoke, her voice carried echoes of both human and Arxian consciousness. "It works. The merging is stable. Our minds, they're compatible in ways we never imagined. The Arxians aren't just storing their consciousness in our brains, we're creating something entirely new." The Council ships maintained their threatening posture, but uncertainty had crept into their communications. They were witnessing something their science had declared impossible, something that challenged their fundamental understanding of consciousness and reality itself. Over the next several hours, more volunteers from the human crew underwent the merger process. Each integration was unique, as human and Arxian consciousness found their own ways to coexist and enhance each other. Some humans gained access to vast repositories of ancient knowledge, while others developed the ability to perceive quantum probabilities directly. All of them reported a profound sense of connection not just to their Arxian partners, but to the fabric of reality itself. The council representatives watched in growing bewilderment as humans, a species they had dismissed as primitive, casually rewrote the laws of what they had thought possible. Their weapons remained armed, but they made no move to fire. The universe they thought they understood was changing before their eyes. James approached Sarah, who was helping another crew member through their first merger. "How does it feel?" he asked softly. Sarah smiled, her expression both familiar and somehow more than human. "It's like waking up from a dream and realizing that what we thought was reality was just a tiny fragment of what's possible. The Arxians aren't just teaching us, James. They're showing us what we've always been capable of. Human consciousness, our creativity, our intuition, our ability to imagine the impossible, it's been preparing us for this moment throughout our entire evolution." A junior scientist rushed into the chamber, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. "Dr. Chen, we're receiving requests from Earth. Thousands of volunteers are coming forward, offering to participate in the integration program." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. It was such a human response, faced with the unknown, with something that might change them forever. They stepped forward not with fear but with hope and curiosity. The Arxian within her consciousness shared her appreciation for human nature. Together, they began planning the next phase, the systematic preservation of Arxian civilization not in machines or data banks, but in the living, growing, evolving consciousness of humanity itself. As the Council ships finally withdrew, their threats replaced by requests for observation rights, Sarah felt a profound sense of pride in her species. Humanity had proven once again that their greatest strength wasn't technology or military might, but their fundamental willingness to embrace the unknown, to see possibilities where others saw only barriers, and to extend a helping hand even when doing so meant transforming themselves in ways they couldn't fully predict. The experiment that everyone had called impossible was just the beginning. Humanity was about to embark on an evolution that would reshape not just their species, but their understanding of consciousness, reality, and possibility itself. Price of compassion. The sanctions hit Earth like a tidal wave. Within days of the successful consciousness integrations aboard the Curiosity, the Galactic Council had declared a complete embargo on human space. Trade routes were blocked, scientific exchanges suspended, and diplomatic relations severed. Their message was clear: help the Arxians, and humanity would face isolation from the galactic community. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Council, her enhanced consciousness allowing her to perceive the quantum patterns of anxiety and determination swirling through the chamber. The Arxian presence in her mind, which she had come to know as Zenith, helped her process the complex web of political and social implications they faced. "The Council's sanctions are having their intended effect," she reported, projecting holographic data showing economic impacts. "Our fledgling colonies in the Alpha Centauri system are cut off from vital supplies. Several major corporations have lost billions in cancelled contracts. They're trying to force us to abandon the integration program." And yet, she continued, her eyes carrying that distinctive galaxy-deep look of a merged consciousness, applications for the integration program continue to flood in. Over 2 million volunteers in the past week alone. The chamber erupted in overlapping discussions. Council member Zhang raised his hand for silence. "Dr. Chen, we understand the humanitarian aspects of saving the Arxians. But can we justify the suffering these sanctions will cause our own people?" Sarah felt Zenith's thoughts intertwine with her own as they formulated their response. "The question isn't whether we can justify helping the Arxians," she said slowly. "The question is, can we justify abandoning them just because helping them comes at a cost?" She gestured, and new holographic images filled the chamber, children in integration centers, their eyes filled with wonder as they learned to perceive quantum realities, scientists making breakthrough discoveries as merged consciousness gave them new ways to understand the universe, artists creating works in dimensions that had never existed before. "The Council isn't just trying to stop us from saving the Arxians," she explained. "They're trying to prevent what we're becoming. Every human who undergoes integration emerges changed, enhanced, but still fundamentally human. We're not losing ourselves, we're growing into something more, something that frightens the established powers precisely because they can't control it. A quiet voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Dr. Harrison, who had finally undergone integration himself, stood up. "There's something else you should all see," he said, his merged consciousness adding weight to his words. "We've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. The Council's actions, they're not as unified as they appear." He projected new data streams showing underground movements across dozens of civilizations. Young members of even the most advanced species were questioning their leaders' decisions. The sight of humanity willing to suffer hardship to help another species had sparked something, a revolution of thought that was spreading through the quantum fabric of space itself. "The Council fears us because we've proven them wrong," Sarah continued. "They said integration was impossible, that biological and quantum consciousness couldn't coexist. We proved them wrong. They said trying would destroy us. We proved them wrong. They said no species would accept such fundamental change. We proved them wrong. Every time they set a limit, humanity shows that limits are often just an unwillingness to imagine alternatives." The debate raged for hours, but in the end, Earth's decision was unanimous. The integration program would continue. Humanity would face whatever consequences came from their choice to help a dying civilization. The response from the Council was swift and harsh. New sanctions targeted Earth's remaining independent trade routes. Automated defense platforms were positioned along major space lanes, officially for quarantine purposes. Human ships were banned from most populated systems. But something unexpected was happening. As news of Earth's defiance spread, underground networks began to form. Young members of advanced species, fascinated by humanity's willingness to transform themselves to help others, began secretly visiting Earth. Some even requested to observe the integration process, their scientific curiosity overcoming their society's prohibitions. Sarah found herself hosting a clandestine meeting with representatives from 3 of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. They had come in secret, risking their positions and privileges to understand what their leaders feared so much. "Your species continues to confound our models," a Volturi scientist admitted, their crystalline form shimmering with interest. "By all logical analysis, you should have surrendered to the sanctions months ago. Your economy is suffering, your expansion into space has been halted, and yet we persist," Sarah finished, sharing a knowing look with Zenith in her mind. "That's what your models never account for, human stubbornness, our unwillingness to accept defeat when we know we're doing the right thing." The meetings continued in secret and gradually, support for humanity's cause grew. Underground networks began smuggling vital supplies to Earth's colonies. Anonymous data packets containing advanced technological information would appear in human networks. Young aliens, fascinated by humanity's transformation, began seeking asylum on Earth, wanting to study and understand the integration process. The Council's attempt to isolate humanity had instead created an underground revolution. Their sanctions, meant to force humanity to abandon their principles, had only showcased those principles to a galaxy that had forgotten the value of compassion and courage. As Sarah prepared for another round of integration ceremonies, she received an unexpected quantum transmission. A group of junior council members wanted to open secret negotiations. They had seen enough to know that change was coming, whether their superiors wanted it or not. "They fear us," Zenith commented in their shared consciousness. Sarah smiled, both physically and in dimensions only integrated minds could perceive. "No," she corrected. "They fear what we represent, the idea that growth requires risk, that helping others might mean changing yourself, that the impossible becomes possible when you refuse to accept artificial limitations." The price of compassion had been high, but humanity had shown the galaxy something it desperately needed to remember, that true advancement came not from power or technology, but from the willingness to help others, even at great cost to oneself. As the sun set over the integration center, Sarah watched new volunteers arrive, their faces filled with determination and hope. The Council could sanction their trade, restrict their movement, and try to isolate them from the galactic community. But they couldn't sanction the human spirit, couldn't restrict the spread of ideas, and couldn't isolate the power of compassion to transform both those who received it and those who gave it. Transformation. 1 year after the first integration, Earth had become unrecognizable. Cities pulsed with quantum light visible only to integrated consciousness. Children played in parks where reality itself seemed to fold and unfold like origami, their merged minds creating shared spaces of imagination that bridged physical and quantum realms. Dr. Sarah Chen stood atop the newly constructed Harmony Tower in New Delhi, her enhanced perception allowing her to see the streams of quantum consciousness flowing through the city like rivers of light. Beside her, Dr. Harrison observed the patterns of human Archean integration spreading across the globe. 10 million integrations, he said, his voice carrying echoes of his own Archean partner. And each one unique. We expected uniformity, but instead, we got evolution, Sarah finished. The Archean presence in her mind, Zenith, rippled with agreement. The integration process had proven far more dynamic than anyone had anticipated. Rather than simply preserving Archean consciousness, the merging had sparked unprecedented growth in both species. Human creativity, combined with Archean knowledge, had begun producing innovations that defied conventional physics. Children born to integrated parents displayed abilities that blurred the line between thought and reality. The transformation wasn't just biological or quantum, it was civilizational. A shimmer in the air announced the arrival of Aurora, the original Archean representative, now existing in a state that even integrated minds struggled to fully perceive. The Council scientists have finally admitted what we discovered through observation, Aurora communicated. Human consciousness possesses a unique quantum property, the ability to exist in a state of perpetual creative possibility. Sarah nodded, understanding flowing through her merged consciousness. It's why we can imagine things that don't exist, visualize potential futures, create art that transforms emotions into experience. Our minds naturally operate in quantum superposition, even if we never realized it. An alert pulsed through their quantum network. Another Council ship had arrived in orbit, ignoring the established quarantine protocols. But unlike previous encounters, this vessel carried no weapons. Instead, it broadcasted a simple message on all frequencies. We request permission to observe. We need to understand. The ship carried senior scientists from 3 of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. They had defied their governments, risked their positions, all because they couldn't ignore the evidence any longer. Humanity wasn't just surviving integration, they were thriving, evolving, becoming something that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about consciousness and possibility. In a secure conference room, Sarah and her team met with the alien scientists. The visitors' shock was palpable as they witnessed young humans casually manipulating quantum fields, integrated couples sharing thoughts across impossible distances, artists creating works that existed in dimensions their species couldn't even perceive. Impossible, one of the alien scientists whispered, their crystalline form vibrating with emotion. Your children, they're accessing quantum states that our most advanced machines can't even measure. Sarah smiled, remembering her own initial disbelief. That's because you're still thinking in terms of measurement and control. Human consciousness doesn't try to control quantum reality, it dreams with it, dances with it, plays with it. We don't see barriers between what is and what could be. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Some humans chose to remain unintegrated, leading to new social dynamics that had to be carefully managed. The physical world had to be adapted to accommodate beings who increasingly existed in multiple states of reality simultaneously. Education systems were completely redesigned to handle children who could perceive quantum probabilities as easily as colors. But the most profound changes were philosophical. The merging of human and Archean consciousness had created a new perspective on existence itself. Where once there had been clear divisions between thought and reality, between possibility and actuality, now there was a flowing continuum of potential. A group of integrated children demonstrated this by creating a shared quantum space in the conference room, a swirling galaxy of thoughts and possibilities that the alien scientists could perceive through their instruments but couldn't fully comprehend. The children moved through quantum states as naturally as they walked through physical space, their merged consciousness turning imagination into reality. This is why the Council feared integration, one of the alien scientists realized. You're not just preserving the Arxians, you're becoming something entirely new. Something beyond control. Not beyond control, Sarah corrected, Zenith's thoughts harmonizing with her own. Beyond limitation. We're becoming what both humans and Arxians were always meant to be, beings who understand that consciousness itself is the bridge between what is and what could be. The alien scientists spent weeks documenting the transformation, their reports sending shockwaves through galactic society. They observed integrated humans solving mathematical problems that had stumped their supercomputers, healing injuries through quantum manipulation of probability, and even beginning to perceive possible futures as clearly as memories. But what struck them most was how human the integrated beings remained. They still laughed, loved, argued, and dreamed. They still celebrated birthdays and worried about their children's future. The integration hadn't erased their humanity, it had enhanced it, given it new dimensions of expression. As the alien scientists prepared to depart, their crystalline forms humming with barely contained excitement, Sarah received an unexpected quantum transmission. Young members of dozens of species across the galaxy were demanding the right to undergo integration. The transformation that had begun with humanity was spreading, carried not by force or technology, but by the simple power of possibility. They'll try to stop it, Dr. Harrison commented, watching the council ship depart. The old power structures, the ones built on limitation and control, they won't go quietly. Sarah looked out over the quantum-lit city, seeing the streams of merged consciousness flowing like rivers of light and possibility. Let them try, she said, her voice carrying echoes of both human determination and Arxian wisdom. You can't stop an idea whose time has come. And you certainly can't stop evolution once it begins. The transformation that had started with a simple act of compassion, humanity's choice to help a dying species, was becoming something far greater. It was becoming a revolution in consciousness itself, a new chapter in the evolution of life in the galaxy. And it had all started because humans, alone among all the advanced species, had been willing to say yes when asked to imagine the impossible.